All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm Noah Lamb from the Lightning Warriors. I know pretty much everyone here, except for I guess um, the second Daniel Flanzig. So we're a youth triathlon. I just want to give you who we are, and we're a youth triathlon team. We focus on helping kids get into the sport of triathlon on Long Island, and we're excited to have Daniel explain some stuff that we all need to know regarding being on the road as a pedestrian or a cyclist. And it's a really important message that all the kids should be aware of, and parents and anybody as they get older and be a driver on the road should know some of the things that might come up while they're on public roads or private fairways, right? So we just want to thank you very much for Dan to do this presentation for us, and it's recorded, so we can you can watch it later on, see if you need to have a conversation with Dan for any other questions about what happens on that could happen on the road. And we're really excited to have this presentation to us. So, does everyone see the slideshow that Daniel put on the screen? You could just raise your hand if you want.
I'll see it.
I think everybody could see it.
Okay, great. All right. Well, thank you, Coach Noah, for having me tonight. My name is Dan Flanzig. I'm an attorney. I have a practice that focuses on representing, in addition to other personal injury cases.
It's Connecticut, right? Yes. She really likes Sacred Heart Hospital about that. There's something and you are out.
Good. All right. Okay. Everybody else heard that, right? Wasn't just me? Okay. All right. So going back. So I'm an attorney. I focus on representing cyclists, pedestrians, and other vulnerable road users. I've been practicing law for about 25 years. In addition to being an attorney, I'm also a triathlete. I was not always a triathlete. I was a duathlete for almost 25 or 30 races. It wasn't until I was 53 years old that I finally decided to get in the water. So I give you guys a lot of credit for being able to do it 25, 30 years before 40 years before I even stepped in the water. So it's really great. I was a lifeguard. I just never wanted to move to that next step of triathlete. It's the swim is a whole different game, but I finally got into that and started doing that and really enjoy racing. Probably did about 7 tries this year, 10 last year, and it's been a great season.
By the way, feel free. I know Daniel's going to ask some questions and some polls, I guess, and you could also turn on your camera so we can probably take some raising hand stuff.
Yeah, and by all means, if anybody has any questions why I'm talking, please feel free to do so. Let me know. So in addition to myself racing, I have 2 children, an 8-year-old and 10-year-old. They've both done some of your races. My son, Andrew, a little bit more into it than my daughter. He's 8 and he's done 7 races so far. My daughter spent 2 summers in sleepaway camp, less of a chance to do the races, but they're really into it. In the left, up here in the left-hand corner, that's our cargo bike. That's how we get to school every single morning. So we're really a biking family. And now becoming a triathlete family. So it's super fun to race with my kids, and I love seeing them get into it. So tonight, I want to talk to you guys about some laws that are going to affect you as a cyclist, as a pedestrian, give you some knowledge as you become older and one day become drivers. In my mind, the way to make the best driver is to talk to young people before they even get behind the wheel, because the way you're going to interact with drivers and cyclists on the roadway is going to be very different from somebody else who does not ride and run as much as you all do. So getting you the knowledge early on, I know for myself and probably for the adults that are on the screen tonight, when we are interacting with with a cyclist or a pedestrian on the roadway, I'm almost 100% sure we are acting very, very differently as we approach that runner or cyclist. So we want you, when you become drivers, to think the same way. So that will be part of it tonight. So I want to start with some questions and see how much you all already know. So we can do 1 or 2 things. You could either maybe drop your answers in the chat and Noah let me know who's answering the question, or you can raise your hand and turn on your mic, whatever's easier.
I think the chat would be helpful.
Okay, so let's use the chat. I'll let you monitor the chat, Coach Noah, okay? So the first question is, until what age are helmets mandatory for children in New York? And this is in New York State. There's a mandatory age. Now, again, I'm going to encourage you to wear your helmet all the time, but we're talking about law tonight. So there is a legal age until a cyclist must wear their helmet. Anybody know the answer?
Anybody?
Yeah, I got a couple in there. Let's see.
I see 14.
Yeah, I think Riley got it right. Riley got it first.
Riley got it first.
All right, Riley wins the first prize.
Okay.
Now, in Nassau County, the law is a little bit different. About 3 or 4 years ago, they changed the law specifically in Nassau County. And what age must a cyclist wear a helmet in Nassau County? It's a trick question. Anyone know? Anyone want to take a guess?
Amanda says 18.
Perfect. Amanda wins. There you go. Yep. So Nassau specifically raised the mandatory helmet law for the county. All right, let's talk about e-bikes. I'm going to get a little bit deeper into e-bikes tonight too, because that's something you all might start to see or have friends that are riding. So you guys could be the experts about e-bikes and about e-scooters tonight. So how old do you have to be before you can even ride an e-bike? There's a minimum age in New York. Anyone know?
Riley says 21.
Nope. Let's go down here. Isabel, 16, correct.
I guess you're gonna get an e-bike then.
How about an e-scooter? What's the age for an e-scooter? There, guys. We have an answer?
Anybody?
Anyone? No. 18, 17. Well, we're all trying.
19.
Nope, somewhere between 18 and 17. There's your hint. Who could do the math? There you go.
Which one is it?
Magdalena got it. 16, the same as
16.
Yeah,
That's
same.
Leia, yeah.
Okay, same as a e-bike. When you're running, should you run against traffic or with traffic when you're running on the roadway?
Oh, you guys should know this one. With traffic or against traffic? I'm on my runners. Juliet says with.
With. Against, Mark.
Mr. Saffron.
Yes. Good job, Mark. And that's the law. That sounds as good practice, but that's actually the law in New York. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. I don't have any swimming law. Sorry. I don't know if there is. Swim with the lifeguards present. I guess that would be the only swimming law I could think of off the top of my head. All right. We'll have a little bit of fun here. Is it legal to ride a bike while talking on a cell phone?
Oh.
So the law in New York is it is not illegal to ride while talking on a cell phone. You can ride and talk while you're on a cell phone. So I think that Riley said no. So I can say the first no.
The answer is no.
The answer is it is not illegal.
It's not illegal.
Yep. The one caveat to that, and let's talk, it's not in the lecture, but I'll tell you the two rules that I think apply here, two laws. Number one, while riding a bike in New York, you have to have at least one hand on the handlebars at all time. So you can't ride without hands. That's illegal. And with earphones, you can't ride with earbuds. You have to have at least, well, you can't ride with two earbuds. You have to only can ride with one earbud. So if you're using some type of device to talk on the phone, a single earbud is fine, but not two. And you can technically talk on the phone if you're holding it in one hand. Again, not recommended, good practice, but we're talking about laws tonight. This is a fun one. Is your bike required to have a seat? Seems like a silly law, but it's on the books. I think Riley said yes. We got the first yes? I can't see.
Riley's the first yes.
All right, correct. Yes, your bike is required to have a seat. What about a bike required to have brakes?
Oh, interesting.
And I think that was Amanda. Yes, again.
I think it's Amanda that came first.
Yeah, your bike is required to have brakes. So you all know fixies or track bikes. They're technically not street legal. So you have to have at least one.
Really?
Yep.
Hmm.
You have to have at least one working brake at all times. All right. So let's just talk about some good practices tonight in addition to law. If you're riding at night, again, we don't want you out there riding at night, but I can imagine there are situations where they either go to a friend's house, coming home from school, and especially this time of year, it gets dark early. We really want to remember that drivers cannot see us. And it's a very difficult thing for you sometimes to comprehend until you become a driver. But a lot of times, especially at dusk, when a driver is confronted with another car's headlights, or situations on the road, or they're taking their eyes off the road to look at other cars coming out of side streets, they're not going to be focusing the way you think they're going to be focusing. So there's going to be a theme here later in the talk, but you have to just remember that assume they don't see you, right? So the onus is not on you to keep yourself safe. It's the onus is on the driver to operate their car properly, but you don't want to be a victim. So what can we do to help ourselves not be a victim? We want to wear bright colored clothing at night. By law, your bike is required to have a white headlight 1/2 hour before sunset, and a red tail light, and also 1/2 hour before sunrise, a white headlight and a red tail light is required. If you're running at night, these really cool new vests that have all the lights are fantastic. If you don't have any of these devices with you, simply holding your cell phone while you run and the movement of the light on your cell phone, if you turn that on, that works super well. Even if you're just walking home at night, just hanging that phone in your hand and walking and moving, any type of moving light, any moving color is really going to be the thing that's going to make you most attentive to a driver. So let's talk about the laws for you while you're running. So we talked about direction a little bit, but this is the actual law, right? I'm not just making this up or good practice. Here's the law with regard to motorists. So when traffic controls are not present, right? So if there is no stop sign or no traffic light, drivers have to yield the right of way to pedestrians crossing within a crosswalk on a roadway. So we always want to cross at a crosswalk, number one, because that's where drivers are expect you to be. And number two, legally, that's where you're supposed to be crossing. If you are running and walking, no pedestrian shall suddenly leave a curb or walk, run in front of a vehicle so that it's impractical for the driver to yield. So not only is it good practice not to come off a curb or walk or run in front of a vehicle, but that's the law. You're not allowed to step off in front of a car.
What about, I have a question on that
Yeah,
one. What about like you're in a parking lot, like at the Tangler Mall or something like that?
Yeah. Then there's really no, as far as I know, no law that's really going to control the right of way. Those parking lots are going to have stop signs. So and to that extent, the stop sign would control the driver's movement. But again, most of those parking lots do have crosswalks. So I would always try to utilize that. But when you move into private property, some of the VTLs don't apply anymore. All right, so like we talked about, when traffic controls are absent. Oops, sorry, just did that one. I bet I moved back. So let's look at VTL 1152. Pedestrians crossing at any other point than a marked crosswalk or unmarked intersection crosswalk shall yield the right of way to a vehicle. So if you're crossing somewhere other than a crosswalk or you have to give the right of way to a vehicle. You do not have the right of way. No pedestrian shall cross a roadway intersection diagonally. So when you're crossing the street, you have to cross directly across the street, not on an angle. Now, this becomes a little difficult for me as a runner. And one of the issues I always have with laws such as this are a little open to interpretation. So this says where sidewalks are provided and can be used with safety, it shall be unlawful for any pedestrian to walk along or upon an adjacent roadway. So if there is a sidewalk present, you have to be on it. Now, I know for me as a runner, I hate running on sidewalks that are just not in good condition. I'm going to end up tripping, I'm going to end up falling. I'm looking where I'm running, so I'm not tripping over raised flags. So the interpretation of safety is really very open. but by law, you're supposed to be there if it's a safe, smooth sidewalk. When sidewalks are not provided, pedestrians walking along a roadway shall walk on the left side of the roadway or its shoulder facing approaching traffic. When vehicles approach, pedestrians shall move as far left as practicable. So like we talked about earlier, when you're running, you're supposed to be running against the flow of traffic and as far left as possible in the shoulder. Anybody have questions about that?
Kathleen has a question. She writes, what happens when both the runner and the vehicle are coming at a stop sign? Who has the right of way?
So the pedestrian should have the right of way if you're at a controlled intersection. So you have the right of way. And we're going to talk a little bit more about good practice, what we should be doing when we do come into contact or with approach a vehicle while we're running or biking. Now, I don't want, one of the things today is I'm not trying to scare you or, this is inevitable that you're going to have a crash, but it could potentially happen. And hopefully it is something that's not serious, but I just want to give you some important information to know if it does happen. So one of the most important things we're going to do is we're going to call your parents first. And then after you call your parents, either they're going to call the police or you're going to call the police. And we want to do that for a number of reasons. We want to first document the crash that occurred because a lot of times people go home. And let's just talk about your bike. Let's just say, you're riding and somebody runs a stop sign, they hit you and they crack your bike, right? We want to be able to make a claim with their insurance company. And I can tell you, most people are not running home and calling their insurance company and say, hey, I just ran over a kid. They might be doing it after the police come, but if the police aren't there, they probably won't report it. So we want it to be reported and validated. And once we call the police, we can make sure the information about that car is accurate and about the driver is accurate. Do they have a driver's license? We can obtain their insurance. Make sure their insurance is valid because a lot of people are driving around without proper insurance. The police will also obtain witness information for you, and they'll also document additional details about the crash, such as road conditions, weather, and things like that. And I'm going to talk a little bit more if your parents are listening about underinsurance motorist coverage, but it's a requirement if you are going to make an uninsured or underinsured motorist claim that the crash is reported to the police within 24 hours. So it's always good practice to call the police, even if you don't think you're hurt. A lot of times as athletes, we walk it off, not thinking we're hurt and get home and realize we are. And you don't want to go back and try to recreate the situation. You want to call the police so everything is done properly from the beginning. If we are not calling the police, the one thing we want to get is a license plate. Because from a license plate, we can identify the vehicle and we could identify, more importantly, the insurance company for that car. So if we wanted to get your bike paid for, we now know who the insurance company is that represents that car and we can make a claim. So the one piece to get, if you have to get something, is take a picture of that car's license plate. All right, let's talk about position along the roadway. And then this is something I'll share with you, and I share it with the grownups, as I share it with the grownups as well. The number one complaint I ever hear, and I get a phone call on Saturday morning or Sunday morning from my friends who are driving, on the North Shore of Long Island and complaining about the cyclists all over the roadway. And they could be like, oh, your friends were all over the roadway again. Like, I'm responsible for every single cyclist in New York. But drivers' biggest complaint about cyclists is the fact that they are riding more than 2 abreast or 3 abreast sometimes on roadways where they should not be riding 2 abreast. So we don't want to interfere with the flow of traffic. And honestly, for me as a cyclist, and I don't know if it's the same for Coach Noah, you guys should look like a nice tight peloton. You should be riding single file. If you can ride double file and there's space to do it, and Coach Noah says it's okay, fine. But I think it looks pretty. I think a peloton should be looking like a peloton on each other's wheels, nice and tight, and having a nice, safe ride. But let's talk about the law. So Vehicle and Traffic Law 1234B. Persons riding bicycles shall not ride more than 2 abreast. So the rule basically is you can't ride more than 2 abreast. You can under certain circumstances. So 2 abreast is 2 cyclists riding next to each other. Person who riding bicycles or skating or gliding on inline skates upon a roadway shall not ride more than 2 abreast. Persons riding bicycles upon a shoulder bicycle lane or bicycle path intended for the use of bicycles may ride 2 or more abreast if sufficient space is available. So if you're riding in an area where it has a really wide shoulder, I know certain areas out in Suffolk County have really great wide shoulders, you may potentially be able to ride 2 abreast, but otherwise you don't want to be interfering with the flow of traffic. So that's the rule. Rule of VTL 1234 requires you to ride no more than 2 abreast and never interfere with the flow of traffic. Now, when I was learning to drive, this is what my mother taught me, and it's a great rule now that I ride my bike on the roadway and run on the roadway. What my mother taught me was that assume every driver out there is an idiot. Assume that they're going to do the most dangerous thing they can do, assuming, well, when I was learning to drive, we didn't text, it didn't exist, but assuming they're texting, assume they don't see you. So for me, when I approach an intersection, when you're talking about the stop sign before, when I approach a driver at a stop sign, I make eye contact with that driver. I wave. I make sure that they are seeing me and looking at me, and I never assume they are not. Same when I'm on my bike. If I'm approaching on my bicycle and it's a controlled intersection, I'm always double checking. Even if I have a green light, even though I don't have a stop sign, I want to make sure that person is looking at me and sees me and not looking at their phone. And if I see them looking down, if I see them looking at their phone, if I see them looking at a radio, I am slowing down and I'm assuming that vehicle is going to move when I get there. So it's just good practice to assume that they are not seeing you. And once you do make eye contact, wave and say thank you. When they let you pass, say thank you. It's always nice to let them know that you appreciate them keeping you safe on the road. GoPro, Garmin, these electronic devices have become really one of my best friends as a lawyer because it creates wonderful evidence if I have to go to trial. For some reason, I couldn't get one of the videos to play tonight, so I dropped it into stills. But this is a young man who's riding in Brooklyn in the bike lane. He's in perfect position in the bike lane, doing nothing wrong. He's approaching an intersection. You can see the arrow up here. Cars coming in the opposite direction. He's still in the bike lane. And you can't tell the arrow is over here, but there's a green light for him as he's entering the intersection. And right when he gets into the intersection, you see this car making a left turn in front of him. So, even this guy's doing everything perfect. He's still within the bike lane. You have to assume that people are going to do stupid things like this. And going back to the GoPros, I love this as a lawyer because when I go to trial, all I have to do is play this video for a jury. So I'm a big fan of riding with GoPros. Because God forbid something happens, it's documented on your camera and there's no question as to whose fault it is. Anybody have any questions about GoPros? Anybody ride with GoPro?
Amanda, you have a question?
But what if you don't have a GoPro?
If you don't have a GoPro,
Yeah,
then it's...
And then you get crashed into the car and you don't have no complete evidence when you go to court.
Well, Amanda, you look like a very credible witness. So look, anybody do any moot court in school? Not yet. So look, one of the things about our system, our trials that we have here in New York and the rest of our country is everybody has a right to have a jury hear their case. So if you're involved in a crash, you would testify in front of a jury. Juries in civil cases are made up of 6 jurors and 2 alternate jurors. And Amanda would get on the stand and say, on Sunday, November 12th, I was riding my bike on Main Street and I entered the intersection with a green light and a car made a left turn in front of me. And the driver will testify to his or her version of events, and the jury has to decide who to believe. So it comes down to credibility. What makes more sense? Sometimes there's physical evidence. So maybe you're damaged to your bike on one side versus the other. Maybe there's a witness who saw the accident or crash. So that's who makes the determination. But the wonderful thing about having the camera is we don't have to have a witness. We don't have to have anybody really make much of a determination because that's going to really tell the story 100%. So that's why I like it. And at the same time, I tell my clients who are searching for video, you better hope it shows what you want it to show too, because it's going to show you if you ran a red light, it's going to show you running the red light too. So the video evidence is really important, but it could also hurt you if it shows something you don't want to see. Did that answer your question, Amanda?
Yeah.
Okay, great. And the same for Strava. So, I love this as a lawyer too. You know the joke, right? If it's not on Strava, it never happened. But for a cyclist, it can be really great evidence too. So I'll show you guys a real quick story. This was a gentleman who was riding on Glen Cove Road, and the red line is the cyclist, and he made a right turn onto Old Westbury Road, which is a service road of the Long Island Expressway. Going back to Amanda's version, my client testified that he made the right turn and he was rode down the roadway for about 200 or 300 yards before he was struck from behind. The driver told the police when he got to the scene of the accident that my client made a sudden right on red right in front of him. Well, we were able to look at his Strava, and we look at his Strava, we could see this red line in Strava language. This is almost 300 or 400 yards down the line. And you can kind of see him getting hit, and this is him walking around a little bit over there. But this evidence takes away the driver's story. So his story that my client made a sudden right turn, now looking at Strava, we can say, nope, that's a lie. We have the data. So between GoPro and Strava, there's a lot of electronics we're using now to show whose fault it is if you're involved in a crash. So something you probably know, we're using Strava to keep track of our rides. We're using Strava sometimes competitively to compete with our friends for fun. But there's another purpose behind Strava. If you're in a crash, it's great data to have.
Riley asks, is this the, I'm assuming this screen, is this the watch or a separate camera?
For this screen, for the Strava, I don't remember what he was using to record, if he had a watch or his phone. I don't remember exactly what app he was using. But whether it's coming from your, from your Garmin watch or it's coming from your phone, whatever you're using to record Strava. And again, it's not just Strava, it can be Ride with GPS. They're all basically doing the same thing and collecting the same type of data. Mom and dad, I want to take 2 minutes to talk about this if any parents are listening, because this is super important, something we don't usually think about. So there's something in New York called supplemental uninsured motorist coverage or underinsured motorist coverage. So it's really important to check this. And this is coverage that protects you and your entire family, whether or not they're in the car, a pedestrian, somebody else's car. As long as they're residing under your household, they are protected by your auto insurance, some coverage. And they use a combined endorsement. I'll make it quick so that the kids aren't too bored, but it's important for mom and dad to hear. Some coverage is supplemental uninsured or underinsured motorist protection. So uninsured motorist protection is the vehicle that strikes you as uninsured, is insured, but they disclaim coverage. It's a hit and run crash. So if you're making an uninsured claim, one of the requirements is that the crash is reported to the police within 24 hours. So that's one of the reasons I always say about calling the police right away, because if you do need to take this insurance or use this insurance, it's reported and you're safe. Underinsured motorist protection is something a little bit different. That's if the vehicle that's involved in the crash that strikes you as a pedestrian or as a cyclist doesn't have enough insurance, you could turn back to your own auto policy to make a claim for some coverage or additional coverage under your policy. So minimum insurance in New York State for any a car is $25,000. God forbid a member of your household has an injury that's worth more than $25,000. After you exhaust that $25,000, you can make a claim with your own auto policy for additional coverage. So it's something for, if the parents that are listening, it's really important because protecting you, your children, and anybody that resides on your household. So I didn't want to not talk about it tonight. Okay, done boring the kids with that.
Amanda, do you have a question?
Oh.
So exactly what are e-bikes?
Oh, there you go, Amanda. Perfect timing. All right. So e-bikes. So e-bikes in New York in 2020 were never legal or illegal, but in 2020, the governor signed into law e-bike regulations that now define them, and I'll talk about what that is, who can ride them, where they can ride them, how they can be ridden, and the equipment that's necessary to ride. So there are three types of e-bikes. I'm going to take it down the slide. I did, but it's okay. I'll tell you. There's class one. So class one e-bike is a pedal assist bike that has a maximum speed of 20 miles an hour. So by pedal assist means as you pedal, the motor helps you. And they have a 750 watt motor, maximum speed of 20 miles an hour. Class two has a throttle, which is a button that you can push and you don't have to pedal, or you can pedal and make it assist as you pedal. That also has a maximum speed of 20 miles an hour and 750 watts. Class three has a maximum speed of 25 miles an hour, and it could be either a throttle or pedal assist, either one. Class threes, and I'll talk about that in a moment, they are not legal outside of New York City. So within the confines of New York City, you can ride a class three, but you have to be at least 16 years old to ride it. And class threes require helmets. The other two classes don't require helmets for adults. So those are the three types of e-bikes. So an e-bike is basically something that gives you, it's a little motor that's on the bike that gives you an assist when you ride. So if you're in my office, you would see the 4 vintage bikes that are in my office. So I tend to have a lot of bikes and a couple more bikes at home. In addition to that, I have 2 e-bikes. The cargo bike you saw earlier that I take my kids to school in, that's pedal assist, which is great because I live in a super hilly area. And I have a daughter who's 110 pounds and a son who's about 60 pounds. So kind of hard to push 200 pounds on top of it. Yeah, Amanda, you have a question?
No, I just misclicked.
Oh, okay. All right. So e-bikes, in terms of what their definitions are, they're not defined as a motor vehicle. They're not designed as a bicycle. They have their own section, the vehicle traffic law that defines them, as do e-scooters. Now, to go a little bit further, what is an e-scooter? This gets in New York City, gets a little wonky trying to define them, but here's the quick definition of an e-scooter. Has handleboards, has a handlebar, has a floorboard like this. You could sit on it or stand upon it, powered by an electric motor, has a maximum speed of no more than 20 miles an hour. So they're limited to 20 miles an hour. And this is a poorly written law. So they are not allowed to have a max speed of 20 more miles an hour, but they're not allowed to be ridden more than 15. So I know it sounds a little wonky, but the laws are very wonky. It was a horribly written set of laws that need to be rewritten again. But there's some age limitations for these devices. Operators of e-bikes and e-scooters must be of 16 years of age. No one under 1 year of age is allowed on an e-bike. That's actually the same for bicycles. You can't ride a child under the age of 1 on a bicycle as well. Passengers under 14 on an e-bike or e-scooter must wear a helmet, and e-scooter riders from the age of 16 to 17 must wear a helmet. So I don't know about you guys, but I know in my neighborhood, I see a lot of kids who are under the age of 16 riding e-scooters. And I see a lot of kids not wearing helmets. I see a lot of kids not wearing helmets on their regular bikes too. So you guys can be the good Samaritans and remind them that what they're doing is technically illegal, but if you're going to do something illegal, at least put a helmet on. You know, when I ride with my kids, I try to point out every bad scenario so they can have the knowledge and be able to react. I might be a little bit an alarmist, but it's what I do for a living. So I see the bad things that can happen. It doesn't mean it's going to happen to you. I just want to teach you all how to avoid it happening to you. So I always tell them, I could fix every body part on them. Like we could fix an arm, we could fix a leg, we could fix a shoulder. The one thing I can't fix is a brain. So the one thing that I always remind is helmets are so critical, whether it's a short ride or a long ride. It's the one piece of us that can be damaged forever and that we can't fix. So some additional laws for the e-bikes and e-scooters, like a bicycle, require headlights, reflectors, and taillights, require a bell. So your bikes, all require a bell as well. Not that we see a lot of beauty. I know. And look, the funny part is you don't see a lot of beautiful, truck Demanis coming out of the truck shop with bells and reflectors, but the laws do require them to actually have reflectors on the wheels and bells. That is the law. E-scooters, like bikes, require a brake. They can only be operated on a posted speed on a roadway with a posted speed limit of 30 miles an hour or less. And e-bikes may not be operated in excess of 20 miles an hour. So again, when I talk about why this law is a little wonky, you could ride your bicycle as fast as you want on any roadway, but e-bikes can only be operated at a maximum speed of 20 miles an hour, class 3, 25 miles an hour. So it's a little nuanced part of the law that a lot of people don't know, but if you're coasting down a hill on an e-bike over 20 miles an hour, technically it's legal. You're on your own bike, perfectly fine.
Riley asks, you really need a bell.
You really, well, so technically, yes, by law, you are required to have a bell. From a practical standpoint, is a truck going to hear your bell? Most likely not. But if you do confront a pedestrian, it's nice to have the bell to warn the pedestrian that you're approaching. But the law requires a bell. Law requires reflectors on the bike, both on the front and rear and on the wheels. Although you see very few road bikes coming out of the shop with them on. In fact, I know when I pick up my bike, usually they're in a bag that they hand to me with all the other parts. But technically it's supposed to be there. Okay. We talked about class 3 bikes, that they're not allowed outside New York City. Okay, so I think we're wrapping it up. If you forget all the stuff I'm talking about tonight, I do have an app. It's only on the App Store. I made it 10 years ago. I had it refreshed for this iOS system. I'm sure I haven't checked in a while still if it's still working, but it's there. So it has all the laws and rules and everything we talked about tonight. It's kind of neat. Also, can help you collect some information. God forbid you're in a crash. And I also have a book that I wrote that's available on my website. So a lot of things that I spoke about tonight are also in the book, and you can go to the website newyorkbikelawyer.com and you can download the book there if you want to take a look at it. Do a book report about my bike, about my book. And I think we are all good. Anybody have any questions?
No, Riley asks,
Yeah.
how does every bike allow you to attach a bell? And like you said, is it practical? And what's something that's maybe non-intrusive to handling a bike?
Yeah, I mean, most bells are pretty adaptive to most handlebars, so you can make them work. I know on your on a drop bar on your road bike, it's going to fit on. It's not like it's such a piece that's going to slow you down. With the old term of weight weenies, right? Those same people wouldn't. I don't want to wear a watch or put a bell on. It's going to slow my bike down. But no, I mean, it would attach to your bike, hopefully somewhere a little bit towards the post, so it's not in your way, and should still be accessible.
Anybody have any questions?
No.
Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you for all your questions tonight, Amanda. I appreciate it.
So I'll put everything in another email regarding the app and stuff like that.
Okay.
And yeah, no, I greatly appreciate this.
No, thanks for letting me be here. It's fun. I love I love what you guys are doing. I love the team. It's fun. I have a couple of your kids who every time the Brands duathlon are always passing me, and I love it. Estrella beats me every time. I see that one day. I see that zipping by me all the time. That one name I remember seeing that.
Riley, do you still have a question? You can unmute, Riley.
Oh, I lost
Nope. Good.
The app, you said you're gonna put it in the email?
Yeah, but Dan, what's the app called again?
It's called the Bike Crash Kit. God, let me look really quick. I haven't looked in a while.
Okay, let's do it again. Can you please like
App Store. It's going to be. Let me look. Let's see. See if it's still there.
Thank you.
You're able to find. You should have my logo when it pops up. Yeah, there it's there. It's called Bike Crash App, and it's got my logo there next to it.
Thank you.
Sure, of course.
Well, I hope everyone learned something. Oh, so before we wrap up, what are some takeaways that you came away with before we hang up? Anybody? Anything that popped out like surprised you? I know for me, it's the bike bell.
And the cell Cell phone.
Cell phone.
The e-bike and the e-scooter thing. Which
Okay, you learn a little bit more about the e-bike and e-scooters. Anyone else learn something different?
there were laws for bikes and scooters and runners and walkers and cars. I did not know that. Will they make laws for airplanes when they start flying on top of the road?
I guess we'll come to that when Dan will work on that when it comes through. Anyone else? Well, thanks for being
Can't
on.
have a baby on a bike.
Baby on the
Yeah,
bike.
1-year-old. Yep.
Yeah.
And you have to have a bell.
All right, cool.
I go around every single triathlon without a bell, and every time I go to the nature park, I don't have a bell, so it's kind of strange. I'm not in this meeting, and also not in children's juvenile hall. Do not have the bell.
All right.
Trying to
Well-
think. 2 of my bikes have a bell. Of like 2 out of the 11.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you very much, Dan.
Thank you for having me. This was fun. Thanks.
I'll talk to you later. Thanks.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Thank you.
All right.